Welcome back, everyone, to Season 3, Episode 27 of the Inside the Woods podcast, Valley News show where every week we've been giving you an inside look at Dartmouth Big Green athletics. I'm your host, Mike Coughlin, and this week we're checking in on the women's rugby team and hitting the gridiron for some football talk. The Big Green women's rugby team is coming off a second-place finish at the Ivy Sevens tournament on Saturday after posting an overall record of 5-1 at the event. Dartmouth's A side went 2-1 on the day, defeating Princeton 38-10 and Brown 25-0. Big Green then fell to Harvard 22-5 in the final game of pool play and lost to the Crimson again in the championship by the same score. The B side was perfect on Saturday, defeating Brown 17-10 and Princeton 30-5, as well as Harvard 24-19. Now with the Ivy tournament out of the way, next up for the Big Green is the Sevens National Championship, something Dartmouth won last season, which is scheduled for April 25th and 26th in Indianapolis, Indiana. As the Big Green prepare to defend their national title, I spoke with sophomore Annie Henrich, who led her team in points during the 15 season. Also on the show is Big Green football coach Sammy McCorkle. While it's only April, it's never too early to talk some football. The Big Green, who finished 7-3 this past season, opened spring practices last week, so we'll check up with Sammy to hear about what he's seeing from his team early on. Now, with introductions out of the way, let's get to the rest of the show. Now joining me on the show is sophomore Annie Henrich. Annie led her squad in points during the 15 season with 85. Hi Annie, thanks for joining the show.
Hi.
So, this past weekend at the Ivy Sevens tournament, you led the team in points with 11 against Princeton and scored a try against Brown on the way to a second place finish for the team. How do you feel about your performance during the tournament?
Oh yeah, I felt really good, and honestly, points scored, it's fun to hear that, but really it's about what my teammates are doing and how we're setting each other up. But overall, it was a really fun weekend. I was saying to my family and my teammates how I spent this past winter studying abroad in France, so it was so much fun to be back on a rugby pitch, back with my teammates. It was just such a joy to be playing the sport I love again with my teammates and for my coaches. It was a beautiful weekend. So yeah, it was great.
Before we look ahead, I'd like to turn the clock back a little bit. Last month, you and your teammates had the opportunity to compete in the Maris Sevens tournament and train in Fiji. Could you tell our audience a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yes, of course. It was a once in a lifetime experience for sure. So I showed up a little bit late because I came from France, but when we got there, we were able to train with the Fijiana Sevens team, which is the women's national sevens team, which was just such an amazing experience. And to train with them, learn from them, play with some of their Olympians, play under their, hear from their coach too, and Sarevi too, who came on practice, which are all rugby legends, all of these people. So it was just such a remarkable experience to learn from them and learn from their style of play. So we got to practice with them a few times, and then we ran the sand dunes with them too, which is a type of conditioning that they apparently do weekly, which was ridiculous when we heard that because it was very hard, but it was an incredible experience. And then once we got to play in the tournament, it was so cool to see such a different style of rugby and such a passionate country around rugby. They just play with so much flair and freedom, and we had this another experience to play some touch in this park. And a lot of us who had grown up around rugby hear about how in Fiji everyone's going out into their parks and just picking up a rugby ball and playing, and it was really fun to see that truly in action and how that has influenced them at their national team level and their elite level that we got to play against. And I think we learned a lot from playing with them there. I think it's influenced our style of play for this season. So hopefully going forward, we can incorporate some of the speed and some of the flair for sure that they have. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful we were all able to go.
Right, and now looking ahead specifically to the Sevens National Championship, defending a national title is one of the hardest things to do in sports. How do you think this team has approached preparations, knowing there's a target on your back, and, what do you think Dartmouth needs to do to win in Indianapolis?
For sure, yeah. I think you put it perfectly. It's hard to defend a national title. So we've been, I think, obviously we didn't get the result we quite wanted at IV7s, but I think we were able to learn a lot from it too. So we learned what our strengths truly are and how we can execute them better. So going into Indianapolis, at practice we've been talking a lot about what staying calm and like what little things can lead to our big strengths. So we've been working on that a lot, and honestly, I think sevens is a game where a lot, like a little change or a little action can really impact the outcome of the game. So we've been talking and working a lot on our little actions, connecting as a team, and after IV sevens, we reflected with each other and said, we can either learn from this and move forward, or we can have it hang on us that we didn't quite finish how we did last year. So going to Indianapolis, it's a new tournament. We're learning from what we've done, and hopefully we can just go out there and play the best of our ability and, yeah, have fun while doing it too.
Right, and then finally, when we have student athletes on the show, we'd like to ask about their time at Dartmouth. So, if you could you give our audience some insight into how you've enjoyed your time in Hanover on and off the pitch?
Yes, oh my goodness, I love being in Hanover. I love the outdoors here for sure, first and foremost. I spend a lot of time outside, so I learned how to whitewater kayak since being at Dartmouth, and I like to go to the Dartmouth Organic Farm too, so outdoors are a big part of my experience and also part of my studies because I'm an environmental studies major, which is a wonderful department at Dartmouth where I get to do a lot of my classes outside in this wonderful place we have. So yeah, I love Dartmouth, and right now I'm taking this call from out on the green where I ate lunch with a friend, got to play some hacky sack, and I'm probably going to go play spike ball with my team. So I just love Dartmouth. I love the Upper Valley, and I think one thing they say about Dartmouth is that it's like a profound sense of place and purpose, and I've really found that here. So it's been just such a great experience, and I can't believe I'm already in the latter half of my sophomore year, but I'm soaking it all up while I can.
All right, well, thanks very much for joining the show, Annie. I appreciate it, and I wish you and your teammates luck at the national championship.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get to our final interview of the show, let's take a look at what's going on with some other Dartmouth athletics programs recently. While the men's hockey team season might be over, the accolades they've pulled in keep piling up. Hayden Stavroff was named a first-team All-American by the American Hockey Coaches Association. Stavroff, who led the nation in goals, is the first Dartmouth player named All-American since David Jones earned first-team honors in 2007. While the men's and women's lacrosse teams both fell to Brown over the weekend, there were some wins in other programs, such as baseball picking up a win over Brown on April 11th, and softball picking up a walk-off win against Cornell on Sunday. Elsewhere, women's golf finished third at the Rutgers Invite over the weekend, and men's tennis split its most recent matchups, falling to Yale and defeating Brown. Finally, it might be spring, but there's always room to talk some football, as the Big Green began spring practices last week and are laying the groundwork to improve on this season's 7-3 record. For more information on recent happenings in Dartmouth athletics, check out vnews.com for the Dartmouth Roundup published every week. Now, with some updates on Dartmouth athletics out of the way, let's get to our final interview of the show. Now with me on the show is head coach of Dartmouth football, Sammy McCorkle. Sammy has headed the Big Green since 2023 and led his squad to a 7-3 season this past fall. Now, a new iteration of Dartmouth football has started preparations for a new season with spring practices. Hi, Sammy. Thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Mike. How you doing? Thanks for having me, my man.
So, I mentioned it in the introduction. The program started up spring practices last week. As a head coach, what are the biggest things you're looking for from your players during this time as, we're still a little ways out from camp and then, a ways out from the regular season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you're looking for is just the development of each player, each position. Who's the next guy that's prepared and preparing themselves, and potentially be ready to step up to be a huge contributor for us. And I think just seeing the growth of our guys, coming off the off season of training, and guys are bigger, guys are stronger, guys are much more mature. And the biggest thing you're looking for is who's going to step up and be that guy. And then also just, who, depth-wise, who are guys that we feel like can be in a position to help us out next season.
Right, and sticking with spring practices, having wrapped up the first week this past weekend, were there any individual players or position groups that, either stuck out to you during the week or sort of, impressed you with how they came into, spring camp?
Well, I think the wide receivers. We've got a number of guys who are back who've had some experience playing for us last season, and really impressed with the leadership, especially from our senior class. I think Nick Lemon and Jonathan Nelson and Ian Scott have done a great job of stepping up and leading those guys. But just the urgency and just the way they come out every practice, and the way they've in the weight room, and just the way they've come out and performed at a high level. I'm really excited about that. Also on the offensive line, that's the one spot that, we graduate, I think, 4 of our starters from last year. Very talented group last year. So we have a lot of guys who have an opportunity to step up and fill those spots, and really impressed with Julian Sutton. Anthony Ndika has had a really good spring with us. Max Livingston, who's played a good amount for us last year. And Cisco Caballero, who played a lot for us last year, and Will Prince. So really impressed the way those guys have gotten better with each day. Defensively, really, Joshua Johnson up front, defensive line guy who's played a lot of snaps for us. He's done a great job mentoring the rest of that crew. And, linebacker Steve Simpkins is back healthy. And Johnny Riley, who's played a good amount for us last year, has had a really good spring. And then in the back end, secondary-wise, we graduated some really good players, but we also returned a really good player with Harrison Keith, who led the league in interceptions, and then Cam Best and Jordan Barnes and McCoy Maddox and Nike Ratcliffe. Those are all guys who played a good amount for us that we're excited to have back and have been doing a really good job this spring for us.
Right, and also heading into next season, there have been some new additions to your staff, and Jordan Belfiore, Todd Gilchrist, and Quentin Jones. What sticks out to you about each of these guys, and made you want to bring them to Dartmouth?
Well, we talk about it all the time. It's no different between players and staff. That's part of the business where you have, new names. There's new names, new faces, but our standard never changes here with Dartmouth football with our program. We have a standard, we have a core values, and every one of these individuals in the whole interview process, they checked all those boxes. And that was the biggest part of it, that we wanted to make sure we bring individuals in here that understand what our standard is and what the expectation is. And every one of these individuals, they've done that and they've shown that. Change, it can, for some, change can be a little scary, but change is exciting as well. And I'm really excited about the individuals that we brought in this program. I mean, just from the day one they stepped on campus here, just their sense of urgency, their attention to detail has been phenomenal. And you can already tell with our players that it's been a great opportunity for our players to see that and learn from them. And our players are performing with that same type of urgency and attention to detail.
Right, and you alluded to this. Obviously, in addition to the staff changes, inherently there's changes in the roster with graduating players. You mentioned the losses of starters on the offensive line. The program lost, its top 5 tacklers. How confident are you the team will be able to make up for losses like these, especially, at important positions like the offensive line, and then on the other side of the ball, some of the guys that were flying around making plays for you guys?
I mean, this is every year. You lose good players, but this gives opportunity for guys who give them an opportunity to step up and be the guy now. And I think with our team, as we don't dwell on the past and we don't look forward in the future. We focus and lock in every single day, and that's our job as coaches and our job as players to develop one another. And I'm really confident that we've got good talent. The big thing is now is getting that experience. And that's what spring practice is about. We only get 12 days, so you got to maximize those 12 days. and we've got 5 down, and we got 1 tomorrow. And but that's the critical part is make sure we maximize each one of those days and help our guys develop. And when those guys, and the biggest thing is just making sure our guys start to have confidence. And you can start to see that with each practice as they start to understand what they're doing, as they start to make plays. You can see that confidence start to build. And I told our team yesterday, I don't want to wait to be good. I want to be good now. But we've got to do the little things, and we've got to make sure we're out there each day preparing ourselves to be good as quick as we possibly can be.
Right, and then finally, looking to next season, if there was one thing that last season's team was great at, or an attribute that they had that you'd like to carry over to this season, what would it be? And then, on the flip side, where is an area you would like to see this version of the Big Green improve?
I think the biggest thing for us is just complementary football. I thought last year our guys did, offensively, defensive, special teams. We worked well together as a program, and complementary football is key. Making sure you do the things to put the other side of the ball in a good position, in a good situation. I think just our grit too. I think our team last year, we were in tight games. Our guys didn't flinch. And, we prepare our guys that way. We put them in those situations all the time in practice, and they did a good job of taking what we did in practice and taking those situations and implementing those in a game situation. Just that calmness and that confidence. And that's the one thing going forward that's we're trying to develop this spring is just that confidence and preparing our guys when you are in those situations on game day. We try to put them in the most difficult situation during practice, most chaotic situation. So when you get to a game, everything slows down, everything's is calm, and where you don't flinch. But I think the biggest thing going forward, this team, what we're going to need to establish is physicality. We've got to be a physical team in the trenches. Both offensive line, defensive line starts there. But overall, as a football team, we have to become a physical football team. And that's our goal coming out of spring, and that'll be our goal going to preseason and as we move into next season.
Well, thank you very much for joining the show, Sammy. I appreciate it, and I wish you and your team a good rest of the spring season.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me on here.
And that was Season 3, Episode 27 of the Inside the Woods podcast. As always, thanks for listening. Next time, we'll be back with Episode 2 of the Upper Valley Varsity View podcast. Till then, enjoy the rest of your week.